Going on, ladies and gentlemen, Luke Innes here. I've got another brand new release to talk about today. I didn't get to see this one on release day, although I really wish I did. It's the brand new British zombie post-apocalyptic movie, The Girl with All the Gifts. So the movie is directed by Colm McCarthy and it stars an ensemble cast that includes Gemma Arterton, Glenn Close, Paddy Considine and Seni Ananwa. So essentially this movie is set kind of over 10 years into this kind of zombie apocalypse thing. The central character Melanie is a 10-year-old girl who is part of a group of children that were born to infected mothers. The whole idea is that they're on the line between being human and zombie, or hungry as they call them in this movie. They're kind of being educated under very strict controls in this underground bunker. The teacher there, Gemma Arterton, has a particular fascination with this one child, Melanie. They get on really well. There's problems at the bunker. There's you know, a huge military presence led by the sergeant, played by Paddy Considine. Given the potential ramifications of what would happen if these children were not kept under close control, it's fair to see why he's a little bit over the top with them, let's say. And there's also a doctor there, played by Glenn Close, who is trying to establish some sort of vaccine. When their base eventually comes under attack and the zombies manage to overthrow the base, a small group manages to escape. That includes the doctor, the sergeant, the teacher, the girl, and a couple of other soldiers. They begin planning their continued journey towards the nearest outpost, and along the way they have to contend with hordes of the undead. Now it's got to be said, I like the zombie movie. I'm a big zombie movie fan. You know, zombies, infection, post-apocalyptic movies. I love it. It's one of my favourite. I think that it's such a fertile ground for great storytelling. That said, this is really a pretty special movie, I think. Obviously, the kind of immediate comparison is 28 Days Later, this being a British zombie film with running zombies, or running infected, which is definitely an influence on this. You know, this whole idea of a world that has been completely overthrown. There's also Day of the Dead, is a very obvious influence on this movie when you look at the fact that it all starts off in the military setting. Obviously that comes pretty much straight from Day of the Dead. You know, with time obviously it leaves that, but you know, there are Day of the Dead concepts still at play. You know, this whole idea of obviously the doctor character played by Glenn Close is trying to come up with a vaccine. And there's this whole moral quandary of the fact that this could involve Melanie having to almost sacrifice herself in a way. Not only that, but to go outside of the zombie genre and outside of film, in fact, to H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds. The fact that this is a fungal infection means that once the bodies have died, there's some great shots of people who've like turned into plants, basically, like there's plants growing out of them, like this whole sort of moss that covers, you know, what was once Britain. That totally calls to mind the idea of the red weed and the kind of the flora and fauna of Mars taking over Earth in the book after the Martians have won the war. So I mean, all of that's great, and then one of the more unique things in the mix of this film is the fact that this is set, like, as I say, well over a decade into this kind of outbreak. They've developed this agent this gel that when you put it on yourself, it kind of masks you a little bit to the zombies, because the whole idea is that their sight isn't particularly good. They react more to smell and sound and movement than they do to sight. So that leads to some very tense and interesting scenes where these people are having to move around very close to these kind of sleeping zombies, which, yeah, really it really got me going in the cinema. It was very interesting stuff. I mean, on that note, I mean, the performances are all wonderful. Everyone in this movie is brilliant. They really sell it. Particularly the young girl, I've got to look her name up again, sorry. Seni Ananwa, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But she really sells it as a child who doesn't know anything else but this kind of situation. which is really hard to do. I've got to say that, you know, the script writing, the writing of her lines and her delivery of the lines really does sell this child as someone who this is all she knows, you know. I mean, the only real negative that I can kind of stir up with this movie, during the first sort of third of the movie, when they're still in the base before the base is overthrown by the zombies, it's a little bit heavy on the kind of symbolism, you know, with all the Pandora's box type stuff. Once it's kind of stopped with the symbolism, it brings up its own philosophical points that are very interesting, and that have to be kind of commended, you know. When I look at the development of the characters as well, you know, you look at Paddy Considine's character as the sergeant, and the amount of humanity he gains is just incredible. You know, the way that this character transforms is really remarkable. That's one of the more interesting parts of the movie going through. Like I say, as a whole, the characterisation is just beautifully done. In terms of the more kind of interesting on-screen elements, i.e. the blood and guts, it's definitely a really well affected movie. There is some CGI being used to kind of, but it's only there to embellish the kind of more practical interest. I mean, the first gore scene comes in, I'm guessing, half an hour into the movie, and it's so well done and so scary. I won't spoil it, obviously. So as a whole, the gore in this movie is very well affected. It's got a kind of disgusting, grimy edge that really kind of grounds you. Just, obviously, the fact is that this is a story that kind of, you know, wraps you up, and you kind of have a tendency to forget about the situation at large. And like I say, that all of that brings you straight back down to earth, all of the kind of gut-munching viscera. Overall, I've got to say, The Girl with All the Gifts is a fantastic movie, and I would highly recommend everyone watching this to check it out. I feel like they've achieved a lot on a very modest budget. This is a film that manages to move you whilst entertaining you all at once, as I say. Yeah, there really aren't that many problems with this movie. As I say, there's a couple of moments where the symbolism is laid on a bit heavy-handed, but other than that, I really can't complain an awful lot. This movie gets a very strong 9 out of 10 from me. I think this is going to be one of the movies of the year for my money. And it's an instant zombie classic in my mind. We haven't seen the likes of which since, I guess, 28 Days Later in terms of a serious zombie movie. Thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Luke Innes. I hope you enjoyed this review. Please like, comment, subscribe. I'd love to know what you think of this movie if you've seen it. I don't think this is out in most of the world yet, but if you have seen it, let me know what you think. Please go down to the link in the description, check out my podcast. It's called Ironcast. It's all about music. It's brilliant fun doing the podcast. I think it's a great podcast. Please go and check that out if you're interested. But until next time, stay safe, and I'll be back at you soon with another review.